Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Meticulous Moments with Juanita Kapp. And our special guest today is Char Musillo. He's my friend. He's a MAM Hall of Fame inductee, excellent martial artist. I'll let him tell you all the styles that he has been working on, also perfecting them over the years. And he's also a MAM ambassador. Welcome here at Meticulous Moments and enjoy this session as we talk about victories and struggles and just the daily things of life that make life interesting and how we are shaped by those things, how we turn out for the better, how our characters change, and how it really sharpens our senses as well. It's been a journey. It's been a journey and a journey. They always say difficult journeys lead us to beautiful destinations. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Char onto the stage with me. How are you, Char?
Doing great. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you on here today. You are a good friend of mine and you've done so much for MAM. I just want to say thank you for making the time to be here and for your support with MAM as well. Now, you are a Kung Fu and Okinawan Kempo master. Tell us about your journey in martial arts.
Thank you. I started doing a little bit training when I was younger as a kid, a little bit of taekwondo, some other stuff. But my parents didn't really want to pay for lessons at the time, so I didn't really get into it too much there. And then in 1993, I had sort of what I call my Mr. Miyagi experience. My best friend, sadly just passed away last year, one of my best friends, Chris Etheridge, he met this guy at church who used to own, was an Okinawan Kempo master. He used to own all these different dojos and stuff like that. He was a well-trained, and he was in a motorcycle accident, almost lost his leg, and he started going to church. And at church, he met my friend, and he offered to teach my friend free lessons. So my friend brought me along, and after the first class, my friend dropped out. But I continued to train one-on-one with him for 10 years. And we would do backyard training one-on-one, very hardcore, very physical. He was a big guy. And I would mow his lawn while he worked as a cook in a restaurant at the time. I'd mow his lawn and stuff for lessons. So the whole Okinawan thing, I saw Karate Kid when I was younger, the whole sensei private lessons, mowing his lawn, wax on stuff, really kind of, was very relatable to me from that. So I trained one-on-one with him for several years until he actually decided to become a chess coach in Phoenix, Arizona. So he moved out to Phoenix until his passing. And I would go out there every once in a while during the summers. We'd spend 3 months just training all day long. I remember when I was finishing my graduate degree at UCF, I took my last semester online and I went out there for 3 months. And during the day, he would teach me Okinawan Kempo. We practice all day long. And then at nighttime, he was studying with a Russian grandmaster in chess. Oh. So I'd be over there practicing my katas, what he's learning. And occasionally I would play the grandmaster's 10-year-old son. And out of about 50 games, I won one. He was very good. But my sensei, Leopold Lacrimosa, he wrote for Chess Life magazine and stuff. Great guy, great instructor. Passed away a little too young though. After that, I went on. I studied multiple styles at the same time. When I was at UCF, I was studying Aikido. I was on the UCF karate team, which was Shiatsu karate. So I studied that for a little while. I went on to do that for many years, and then I got involved with Wailum Northern Praying Mantis Tom Tui Kung Fu. Oh. And that was there in Orlando. I'd heard about them. I'd seen them on the Discovery Channel. I went there a few times. I watched their classes. And then one day they had this instructor there, Mike Saxton, who just reminded me so much of my old instructor. He really kind of inspired me to join. I trained there for several years. And then after Mike left, I left, and him and I trained again, backyard one-on-one study with him and some of my other friends that were instructors there that were no longer there. And under Mike, I also trained a little bit in Hung Sing, Choi Lo Foot. And then I did a little bit of Bok Mei at the same time. Not a lot, but a little bit here and there. So kind of a mixture of different styles while continuing to learn a lot more advanced Northern Praying Mantis forms and a couple Southern Praying Mantis forms too, but mainly Northern Praying Mantis. I did that for many years. And
yeah. Sorry. How many years? How many years from 1993?
from 1993. I trained with him for 10 years. I started in Kung Fu, would be in 2000. And then I've been training in it ever since. So in that, mainly in that style. And then I moved to South Florida. I relocated actually to become a TV producer for a couple of different TV shows filmed out of South Florida, working for General Alexander Haig on his business and TV show. Um, Ended up working with a lot of instructors there. And then at the same time, I met a good friend of mine, Sifu Bruce Anderson. And like many other instructors of mine, we would trade styles. Some of my friends, like my friend Sifu Darren, I would teach him some stuff. He would teach me some stuff. And I learned a little bit of Fu Jiao Pai there. I learned a little bit of Hung Gar from him, mainly Kali stick fighting, and a little bit of Choi La Foot too. So I did that for many years. And sorry, I should probably back up there for a minute. I also opened up my own Kung Fu school for a little while in Orlando. Kind of
That
forgot
is
about
so
that.
amazing.
Pretty
So,
important. So
so
yeah,
you have your own school as well, or you had it for a while you were
I
in Florida?
did. Yeah. When I was still living in Orlando, Florida, I opened up there's actually a very large church there called Status that had about 3,000 people in their 20s and 30s because Orlando's a very college area. So we started
Yeah,
a kung fu class there. I started immediately, brought in my best friend Rob Guzman, and then a little bit later Darren Reich, and who's now Darren's son. And we taught that class, and we had up to 300 students come and go in the time that I was there. The average class was
that's
about 30 or so,
yeah.
but it was happened to be very close to Disney. So we had a
Oh,
lot of the Disney MGM performers, the Power Rangers from the Disney parks. A lot of their performers, they would come to the Kung Fu school,
that is
and became great
cool.
friends with them. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. We ran that for several years, and um, some of the kung fu students from there, they went on to become stunt doubles for the main actors in 300, Captain America, a few other movies. So kind of got involved with it doing that way. Still keeping great contact with all of them. So
That's
and then um, that's pretty much the background on most of the martial arts training, or the kind of the quick cap on that. So,
that's
and
an
I did a little bit of Wing
overview.
Chun in there too. I forgot about
Oh,
that.
you
Yeah, I
done
did
Wing
Wing Chun
Chun
for a
too?
couple of years. Yeah.
Wow. You know what? You fit in so well with MAM. And for those who are watching today that doesn't know what MAM stands for yet, it's Meticulous Martial Arts Mastermind. And we have these meetings at MAM where everybody, all the masters, grandmasters, the senseis, the sifus, everybody come together. And then we share information about our style. Sometimes one would present their style, next week someone else. And that is what we love to do. We love the diversity of the martial arts, and we love to integrate those pieces of knowledge that we've picked up over the years. I was very happy to hear that you've been very active in community work, because Meticulous Moments is about community upliftment through leadership development. And you opening those classes in the church helped the community. I mean, the Power Rangers and the people from MGM came to train. They went on to do bigger things as well. And that's what we're all about here at Meticulous and MAM. It's about helping people, equipping people, and realizing that we are all part of the martial arts family globally. And I tell people often, I say, I have two happy places. I always said, my mom asked me when I was young, she passed away in 2020 from brain cancer. And it's because of her that I'm sitting here today doing this, because she inspired me to do this. But she asked me when I was a child, she said, what is your life's dream? I said, I want to tame the pen and I want to tame the sword, because we all have dreams when you're young. And I really just strived for that in my life. So to tame the pen, I went and I studied, theology up to master's level. And to tame the sword, I started martial arts. And those are my two happy places, the dojo and being on here, giving information, having interesting conversations with guests like yourself. You've had a more than 30-year stretch in the martial arts. What is one or two of the most important lessons you've learned in your fulfilling of your dream, really, because you are living your dream?
If I had to narrow it down to two things, I would say that it would be um, repetition and persistence. No matter what you're doing, life kind of throws things in your ways. It throws you curveballs.
Oh, yeah.
I unfortunately have been through a considerable number of accidents and surgeries.
Yeah.
Probably half my body is actually metal. So I mean, to keep going, to keep training through all that. There was a lot of people that really encouraged me to do so. So it was great now that I've overcome a lot of that to be able to encourage, people too. And similar to you, when I was younger, my dad was the chairman of deacons, the chairman of the pastoral selector committee. He was, chairman of this, chairman of that. He spent most of his time just volunteering and helping other people out. And that was just a huge inspiration to me, to see how he just spent so much time working with the community, running homeless ministries. Just that's what his passion was. He didn't have a lot of other hobbies. It was just helping people out. So,
It's
and it kind of
amazing.
inspired.
Yeah. No,
So
please
it kind of
continue.
inspired me to sort of do something similar. The martial arts has always been my passion, my hobby, a side career, but my main career has been working in the behavioral health, especially the substance abuse industry. I
Good.
started off at UCF for a brief period of time, and I tell you this because I know Kevin Oliver's and yours background, and I've had many conversations with him about this. I started off as a um, case manager, substance abuse, and sexual counselor for adolescents in lockup in UCF in 1999. And after doing that for about 6 months, I decided, this isn't really what I want to be doing. The place I was working at was really good at diagnosing people, but I didn't really feel like it
Oh,
was good in helping them get treatment.
yes.
So I ended up switching to an MBA program, ended up getting graduating top of my class with my MBA, went on to run some insurance rooms for a little while, some TV production stuff, worked for two different TV production companies that I mentioned earlier, but most of it has been working in the behavioral health industry,
Good.
helping to set up clinics, write the clinical and operation manuals, get them credentialed, licensed, up and running. I did several of those. I helped start American Addiction Centers, one of the largest treatment companies in the entire industry many years ago. I've opened up several places for even Optum Behavior Health, a lot of other different companies. So that's really been where my career and passion has been to try to help people that are struggling with those ways. And even at some of the wellness centers that I was part owner of or help start, we would use martial arts. We would teach martial arts there and yoga to help people overcome it. Robert,
Mhm.
Downey Jr. is a perfect example of
Yes.
somebody who used martial arts to get his life clean and get off drugs. And I really believe that when you're trying to get rid of one bad habit, the best thing to do is to replace it with
Absolutely.
a good habit. Yeah. So
Absolutely. I'm a professional spiritual counselor, level 5, a religious counselor, and my two specialities is abuse and trauma. And those two really go hand in hand. That's why I chose to specialize in those two. And for 15 years, when I was an ordained pastor, I helped so many kids get out of that realm, because what would we do? We would get them in the dojo where they would be off the streets, where they would be a part of a new family. And the dojo is not just a place to train, it's a place of mentorship. And that I've seen so many times. And a lot of them loved fighting, but we took them out of the wrong place, the streets, to fight, and we taught them how to fight the right way and what are the morals and the values about of being a martial artist. Not just, it's not to make you tough to go out there and beat people up. There's so much more to what the martial arts represents. And that was really, I was very, very happy to do that for those 15 years. I was very blessed, and I'm sure your father was very blessed as
awesome.
well to help the community like that, because people try to, when I was a pastor in the ministry, they didn't see that martial arts is, a vehicle of improvement, professional and personal improvement, because they would delineate between the spiritual, the church, the Bible, and they would delineate between science and energy, which we call chi. And they saw it as separate things. I've never seen it as separate things. To me, it's one thing, because I believe God is God over all. And I believe He gave us martial arts, just like He gave us the church. He gave us the martial arts as a vehicle to help people and to further their lives. So when I brought kids into the church for martial arts training, like a lot like you, I was frowned upon in the beginning because they were like, no, martial arts is Eastern, it's a new religion. I said, no, it's not. When we bow to each other, we show respect. We're not, at least not in my style or my dojo where I was at, we're not bowing to another god. We are learning and using our skills and our talents, and I eased them into it over a certain period of time, so it wasn't a problem later on. But I want to ask you a question. For me, in a worship service, I did worship services. I was the worship leader. I put bands together. I used to preach as well. I would experience God, like that outpouring of the Holy Spirit, and I would be so happy and so refreshed. But I had that same feeling when I would go to the dojo and I would train there and just get in line with myself and with the universe and let my energy flow and forget about the rest of the world. Just focus, and be present in the moment. For me, it was one thing because I carry my energy everywhere I go, whether I'm doing worship or whether I'm training or even when I'm going out there and just doing a good deed out in the world. What's your experience like? Because I can hear you grew up in a religious home and also in the dojo. You've done a lot in that energy environment.
Yeah, absolutely, and I completely agree. The church that I went to, the status in Orlando. I mean, I've been involved in leadership in several churches, but that particular one, they had a lot of like outgoing outreach ministries. And I talked to one of my best friends, Anthony Philip Smith. Or sorry, Philip Anthony Smith. So that backwards is going to kill me. He used to just be Phil, so I get confused with the long names sometimes now. But I had him start a art class at the church that became very popular. Another one of my friends started a yoga class at the church, which was very popular. And again, I've heard the stories of people say, well, if you're doing yoga, you're in the forms of,
I
different
know.
gods and all that stuff. And I mean, maybe there might be some roots of that back in India, but I just don't really buy into that because
Yeah.
that's not how you feel when you're doing it. You feel like you're worshiping God.
Yeah.
During the quiet times, the meditation, you focus on God. When I struggle in martial arts, the verses like, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me really shine. My favorite life verse is, as iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. And
Amen.
there is examples of martial arts in the Bible. I mean, David
Yes.
himself says, the Lord teaches my fingers, to fight and my hands for battle. There is definitely examples of that. I think that martial arts probably originally came from angels because we
Yes.
hear in stories in the Bible of great battles, of angels having mighty battles and so forth. And when David said that, the Lord taught him how to fight, I believe a lot of that knowledge did come from him. So
Amen.
yes, some of it did spawn from Eastern culture because it's an older culture than Western culture. But
Yes.
just because it spawned out of an evil culture, good and holiness is everywhere, even in
Yes.
evil environments, and it can
Mhm.
shine its way through. So even through yoga, even through kung fu, and especially kung fu, karate, martial arts, it really is a way that you can express a passion for God and a discipline for God. And the outreach ministry that I started, Status Kung Fu Sphere, was the largest and longest running outreach program at that church, which again was a massive church in Orlando that really hit a younger generation. I mean, we had a lot of professional surfers, skaters, people from Paul Mitchell's, karate team there. I mean, a
Yes.
lot of Full Sail students and working in Hollywood because it was right next to Full Sail. So you're talking about a lot of really high qualified, great, amazing, creative people. And they all would come together there, and it really became, something very special. And God definitely used Kung Fu to bring people into the church. Especially since during Kung
Absolutely.
Fu class, we'd open and close with a prayer. I'd always have Christian hip hop playing in the background. We'd have a lot of
Nice.
people that just come in for the Kung Fu and they'd be listening to the music and they're like, wow, this music's really good. This is
Yeah.
Christian. Can I get a copy of this? And I'd go out and I'd buy them a copy of it. So it definitely really, helped bring honor to God, through that discipline. So I agree with that 1,000%. I don't think you can separate one from the other. When you strengthen the body, you strengthen
Yep.
the mind and you strengthen the spirit, and vice versa. When you
Absolutely.
strengthen the spirit, it strengthens the mind and the body. So as Paul said, it's a race we must run with perseverance.
Absolutely. That's a most excellent answer. I agree with you 100%. And you were talking about David and how God taught him to fight. I agree with you. There's scripture to back this. And David had 33 men that were the best of his arsenal, I'd say, best of his soldiers. And they were like today's secret agents or snipers or, people that go undercover. So a lot of the things, guys, and I've said this to the audience so many times, you see these movies where the whole city blows up and the hero walks away and it's just fire behind him. That comes from a story in the Bible. A lot of the things that we see on film is actually inspired, like Shrek. I mean, there was a talking donkey in the Bible as well. That's where the idea came from. So I
Yeah.
agree with you. It's one thing, and the body, the soul, the spirit, it's all one. And it's just a wonderful privilege to be in the martial arts. It is something that is transformative, and it's something that really helps you to delve so deep within yourself, in your spirit, that you realize what you are capable of course, through God's grace and His mercy. Now, you have, and I know you have had so many struggles. You've had struggles with surgeries, you've had struggles with injuries, and you still persevered, just like you talked about perseverance now. And that's something that we learn in the martial arts as well. Tell us about those struggles and tell us about how you are now using that to help others.
Um, I mean, without going into every single detail, I mean, the long story short, when in 2015 I was out jogging as a pedestrian, I got hit by a speeding car. I decided not to have a back surgery at the time. A couple
Yeah.
months later, I started having my legs would just randomly go numb. And it turned out that I had ruptured discs that had leaking spinal fluid going down my legs that were causing the nerves and stuff to go out. So I had my first spinal surgery. And right afterwards, it was about a week or so afterwards, I just started getting very sick. And every time I would throw up, I felt like a sledgehammer was shattering my spine. And, I'm not the smartest when it comes to going to the hospital. I've cut off fingers, stayed at home. I'm bad about going to the doctor sometimes. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's just the stomach flu. It's nothing major. My girlfriend at the time talked me into going to the OR. I got in there and turns out I had a really bad spinal infection. They said if I hadn't made it in
Oh,
within an hour, I would have died. So I came very
oh
close to
my
dying
gosh.
a second time from the car accident then. And they rushed me to another hospital for emergency spinal surgery. And I spent about a year and a half where I could barely walk after that.
Mm,
So it took a long time, but even still, I was still training my upper body in martial arts, still trying to do some weights, just couldn't walk that well.
yeah.
That went on for several years and I kept training, kept coming back. And then around 2023, after doing a little better, during helping to deliver my daughter, um, for 2 hours, I was pushing, on leg, holding a leg up, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess the constant pressure on it, where my back was ruptured, caused my spine to actually start sliding back and forth 7 millimeters,
Oh.
grinding on my nerves. So I had to have another spinal surgery at that time. During that spinal surgery, they nicked an artery, which put me in the ICU for a week. Excuse me one second, let me take some water.
No, that's fine. I'm going to drink some water too. That's crazy.
Yeah, so they nicked an artery. I ended up in the ICU for a week. During that time, somehow I had severe ulnar nerve damage done to my hands, where I could barely move or feel my fingers. Still struggle with that a little bit. Had two ulnar nerve surgeries since then. One last year that gave me some heart problems. Had heart ablations and stuff that I had to have done. And then because of the damage to my leg, I also had to have a total hip replacement. So I've been going
Oh,
through, um, you know, and I tore a bicep at one time too, but that's a separate related thing. But
yeah.
just every single time I have an injury, I found that just, focusing, on the positive, not giving up, doing what you can. If you can't do everything, you do what you can do. I
Yes.
switched to starting just training more in, Southern style Kung Fu martial arts, back to some karate Kung Fu, since I couldn't do the high kicks as much back then, although that flexibility is coming back very quickly.
Good.
So just kept persevering through all that. It's been, a rough several years. Especially, there was times when, I think some of the hardest parts is when, your kids, I had young kids, I have a
Oh,
10-year-old and a 3-year-old. My 10-year-old was only a few months old when it happened. They're sitting there, they're crying, they're begging for you to pick them up. You feel bad
oh,
because you can't at the time. I wanted to teach my son, martial arts at a young age. That's
yeah.
one of the things that kept pushing me when I was younger, and originally starting martial arts when I was struggling. The two things I kept telling myself is, I really want to make it through this because someday I want to teach my son and someday I
Yes.
want to use this as an industry. So
Yes.
it gave me a purpose and a push, more than what I would do for my own personal self, so that's bigger goal and so forth. So, but it's doing much better. I'm starting to get to the point where, I'm able to do high kicks again, still having a little bit of high kicks on issues with where the hip replacement is, but that's coming back. Just had another alternative nerve treatment done yesterday, and it's hit or miss. Sometimes I have flare ups and it doesn't work that well, but it's getting there. It's getting stronger, So, I turned 50 in a few weeks, and my goal is, when I'm 51, at the rate I'm going, I'll be back into full shape, and really able to do those high kicks again. I'm sitting in the squat machine every night, almost getting those splits back again. So I mean, it's hard, it's a lot of pain, but again, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So it's just pushing through that. But doing that, I've had a lot of people come to me with injuries, and they're like, "How'd you make it through this?" And I think that God allows us to go through things sometimes in order so that we can help other people go through those things. So it's one of the things that I
Absolutely.
really like doing, is I like trying to connect with other martial arts that have injuries and learn, well, how did you overcome that?
Yeah.
When I was facing a hip surgery, I was pretty friendly with Ray Park back in the day, and I asked
Yes.
him, he had just had a recent hip surgery, and he gave me motivation. He gave me some stretches, some things to keep going to kind of get that back in order. So I've had some people, some good mentors that have been there and have helped me overcome and get through some of that. So now to be able to you know be almost on the other side of that, and help some others, and make my struggle have some purpose, has definitely been something that I see as a blessing. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And you did not give up. You have a strong spirit. When you went to that dojo with your friend didn't come back the second time, but you did. You remind me of Coach Marvin King. He's one of my very good friends. I've known him for years, like you. And he had a horrible, horrible first experience in the dojo. And I don't think many people would have gone back after that, but he went back, and he's a grandmaster today. He does qigong, so he's my qigong instructor, and it's so wonderful to see that perseverance, to see how you. And I've known you for a long time, and let me tell you, George, I've never heard you be negative. And I think that's also very empowering because you're always positive. You'll explain what the surgery is, but you'll always end it with something positive. And you didn't give up. Even if not everything worked the way it was supposed to work, you still found a way to train or to adapt it. Adaptability is very, very important, not just in martial arts, but in life. And I believe that you are going to continue to do great things. You're going to reach that goal that you've set for yourself, and you are going to inspire people and help people because everything happens for a reason. God uses those trials and tribulations in our lives so that we can take the knowledge that we've gathered through the fire that we've walked through and give it to someone else. Be a helping hand and a positive influence, and that's what you are to others. And I'm very, very proud to have you as part of Meticulous Moments. And, ma'am, and we discussed earlier today, I've been having inquiries, so many people asking me about the ma'am magazine. Please bring out the ma'am magazine. We would love to feature this and this. And you are the perfect candidate for the ma'am magazine because
thank you.
your story is just so
Huge honor.
inspiring. Thank you so much. And then the audience, Char is going to be on the next MAM Hall of Fame panel. And he's going to be doing a seminar, and we're going to make those dates work. But he is going to really come and give you a wow session. Now you've worked with so many people in the industry. What was your favorite project or memory of being in the industry and meeting these incredible people?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to meet, I mean, celebrities are, people too, so I try not to put too much hype on that. But, working in TV production studios, also running a large anti-aging clinic down in Miami, we had a lot of celebrity guests. So, I've been blessed to be and met, some pretty amazing people. But probably one of the things that I think martial arts, as well as some other things that opened up the door for me, is and I know you and I had kind of talked about that before, is I got involved in doing hosting a lot of very large events down in South Florida as
Nice.
superheroes. And kind of how that came about is there's a group called Bat in the Sun. and they do a lot of internet videos. They had the #1 internet series there for a while. They have a new movie coming out in the theater in August, starring Jason David Frank, his last movie.
Nice.
And I was very friendly with several members of that group. One of which, Jim, who made all their costumes for their group, he made a costume for an amazing video, Captain America versus the Master Chief from Halo. And he designed the costume, and the guy who played him, Jonathan Carroll, did a great job. He does an amazing Wolverine for them,
Yes.
great videos. But for
Nice.
some reason, Jim did not like the way that he looked in the Captain America suits. So
Oh,
he approached me one time, and we had a loose connection to the internet. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, you know, I think that this is 15 years ago. I think you look like Captain America. Would
right.
you be willing to model Captain America costumes at different events for me, as well as, do some, modeling, some shoots, some hosting, and even some stunt shows for some Marvel events down in South Beach?" So I was like, sure, sign me up. So wasn't really sure what I was getting involved with, but it turned out to be pretty exciting. At the same time, I was doing a couple fitness commercials, fitness infomercials, and I got offered some parts in some movies, which some of them I
Nice.
kind of regret turning down at the time, but
Yeah.
most of them were because I already had previous commitments that I found very exciting. So some of the
Yeah.
events we do is we would host the large events for downtown Fort Lauderdale, downtown West Palm Beach. Thousands of people, were there dressed up in costumes, modeling different costumes, have the speaker microphones. Afterwards we're standing around and, I'm posing for, pictures with, lines with people, 300, 500 people. So it kind of, to me, I was like, you know what, if I'm in some, small martial arts movie or some small,
Yeah.
movie, I may be seen, maybe recognized, may have a one line here, but I was like, this is way more exciting. I get to
Exactly.
meet all these people in person, have them stay in a line, which just kind of blew my mind, wanting to
Yeah.
take pictures. So I did dozens of events doing that. I did Captain America, I did Hawkeye, I did
Oh,
Green Lantern for some events. I even did Deadpool for one of them. But I got really involved in that for several years up until the point of the car accident. And that was a lot of fun. And hosting those large events, I was live on the radio as Steve Rogers, for Captain America. Hosted the largest block parties, in South Florida.
that's
People would start recognize me as I walked around South Florida. So like, hey, it's Captain America. So
beautiful.
got a little bit of local celebrity status. It was a lot of fun to be able to do those events, and just met a lot of amazing and great friends. And then through that group, I introduced one of my Kung Fu students, Dirk Ellis, to the Bat and the Sun director. And they were trying to figure out who to do against a Spider-Man video.
Oh,
So, I had mentioned about how he was one of the Power Rangers at Disney, but he
mhm.
had played Darth Maul and done some work for Ray Park. I met Ray Park through him, actually. And I'm like, you should have him be Darth Maul in your video and do it through Spider-Man. So they
Yeah.
end up casting him for that role, which that video is on YouTube. It's got 20 million, or excuse me, 28 million views already on that video. It's several
Crazy.
years old, but it's been there for a while. But he went on to do their Deadpool, several of their other characters for them, star in a bunch of one of their parts. And I met a lot of great friends through him, Casper Van Diem and some others, that had worked with the Bat and the Sun group, Kevin Porter, some others. So it just turned out to be another really cool experience. And being able to do those live superhero events, it was just a lot of fun. And then we would do some stunt shows and some fight scenes that I would choreograph for some live audiences down in South Florida. And then through that, I also met some people that would do some other performance at cons. So I would start
Mhm.
coordinating fight shows on stages for some of the larger cons
Yeah.
in Orlando and in the Florida area. So just was
Fantastic.
an excellent, awesome opportunity. So
It's an opportunity, and you use that opportunity in a positive manner to do community work. I mean, those you made those people's day at those events. I mean, they're standing in line. It brings smiles to the kids, and also it's family time. We're very focused here at Meticulous Moments also on the family unit. And I love events. I absolutely love events. I always go to the ones I can fit into my schedule, and I'm super excited that you'll be a part of my next event. And we'll do some choreography or something in there. Ron Smerenberg, very good friend of mine, he's practically like my brother. We did a bit of choreography before the first opening. It was the opening, right, just to break the ice a little bit. And it was so enjoyable. It was really, the people loved it, and it just set the evening on a different tone. So I'm very excited to have you on there. I'll connect you with Ron. We'll start a chat there, everybody, and then we'll see what we can do for next year. You are very family orientated as well. You have a family, you have your kiddos, you have your wife. Tell us about your family and how the struggles that you went through have bonded you closer together.
Yeah, I've got a 10-year-old son that was born shortly after my first car accident. So unfortunately, most of my life, he's known me as kind of recovering and going through the struggles. But again, that's one of the things that sort of inspired me is, you got to know who's watching. I know he's
Yeah.
looking, I know he's watching, so keeping physically fit, keeping in shape, not letting the injuries, stop me. I realize those are something that even if he doesn't realize it at a young age, when he gets older, he's going to see that. And it is something that he appreciates and looks up to now. So it's been a great thing. I wish that I had been able to do more of the super events when he was a little bit older kid, so he could have been there some for them.
Yeah.
A lot of them were more adults only for large events in downtown, but we also did a lot of you know um, big events at the park and stuff where we'd have some kids, and that was always a lot of fun to take pictures with the kids and have them get all excited. I was able to take him to one of my last events when he was probably about a year old. He doesn't really remember it that well, but he's seen the pictures and had a great time with that. So I've had a 10-year-old son, and then I have a 3-year-old daughter. So
Oh,
um, yeah, and I do a little teaching with him in martial arts, not a lot. I want to get him into more. I really kind of wanted to get him started,
yeah.
someplace locally, but we ended up moving out. To long story short, we ended up moving out to Wisconsin, and there's not really a lot of martial arts schools around
Oh,
here. But my 3-year-old daughter, she's already. I mean, she follows me around when I'm doing forms, do my yoga poses. I mean, she's already starting to really get a hang of it, and she loves it. So it's great. I love having the kids around, and they're just the biggest blessing there is. So
absolutely, absolutely. I don't know what I would have done without my kiddos. My son started when he was, I think he was 5.5, and he went first for 6 months because I wanted him to have an extracurricular activity. And I saw so many positive changes in this child. I said to my daughter, she's 9 years old, I said, I think we might just also have to start martial arts. So I went to the sensei and I said, well, I'm not sure how to ask this, but Josh has been with you for a few months now, and I just, man, this child is just blossoming. And I had my daughter there, I said, and I brought my daughter Kayla with me. I said, can we also start? He said, well, at the moment there's no adults in our school, but you can be the first adult. We'll just put you with the rugby players and those the like the ones that are almost graduating. I said, no problem. And I was thrown into the deep end because they were also fit. I got fit very fast, and these rugby players are very strong. I had to jiu-jitsu with them, and do full contact fighting with them, and MMA. But it was so good because it really shifted my mindset. And my sensei, my Usakiyoshi, now he became my mentor. And everything, all the principles I learned in the martial arts, I started applying them in how I was raising my children, in how I was conducting my business, even in how I was being fulfilling the role of being a pastor. So, what you're doing with your children, very good. That's the best gift you can ever give your children, is to let them follow in your footsteps. I have actually a lot of grandmasters that do online training, and I will send you some information on them. They've got different styles, so you can sit, maybe they have classes, because I know in COVID what we did to train with the lockdown is we had to do Zoom classes because we couldn't go, everything was closed. So yeah, very important to be that example, not just to say the things and not do them, to do them, to say them and let them see, because we are their examples. What is your daily routine like? What's the favorite part of your day? Do you start out? Because I know martial artists that go and train early in the morning, and then, they go on for the rest of the day with their work or their ministries. But then I have other martial artists that prefer to train in the evening, and that's just because their schedule doesn't allow it during the day or early in the morning. What's your schedule like, and what would you say is your favorite part of your day?
Good question. I usually start off my day with some cardio or some weights, some yoga, some stretching, and then I do whatever work I've got to get done during that day, and then I usually end the day with practicing some martial arts. So it has to be a good balance between work, spiritual life, being a father, staying
Yeah.
flexible, also hitting the gym, to work out and practicing the martial arts. So I'd say my favorite time of the day though is at nighttime when I get to tuck my kids in, pray with them, and talk to them about the day, the struggles. My son is always wanting to know about what training I did that day if he wasn't around. And we talk about overcoming obstacles, and he'll see me struggling with something, and know that I keep working through that. And so those um, tucking him in at nighttime, those bedtime stories, praying together, reading together, and just again kind of talking about some of the things that that I've done that day to push through and work through some of the injuries that have been holding me back. So
Good answer. Absolutely. Kiddos, I also enjoy the end of the day. That is, I just like to be, because the day is so busy. For me, the end of the day is the best time, because then I can just settle my mind and be present in that moment. And, there's this clarity that I get for the next day. And that helps me, just to, because we live in a time, Char. I mean, our kids do not have a childhood like we did. Everything is bombarding them from the outside, externally. There's the phones and the tablets and the television, and it's just too much. It's an overload. So we have to unfortunately roll with the times, but that time, that place of peace and quiet, I think that is so important, for us to recalibrate, really, because we can get lost in all the chaos.
definitely. So yeah, and I'm sounds like you have a lot of experience with that. And again, that's one of the reasons why we're good friends and we have so much in common is the spirituality side, the martial arts side, the substance abuse background, with Kevin and just the passion for helping people. I mean, I definitely relate a lot to you, when you talk about those kind of stories and so forth. And it's always great to connect with others and to keep inspiring each other, keep each other accountable, and
Yeah,
just keep going. What's next? I
absolutely.
can't wait to see what life brings next. So
Absolutely, absolutely. It's wonderful how God positions things, and I'll share this with the audience. I don't talk about this a lot, but I'll explain where the first time. If you hear some noises in the background, there's two puppies in the shop. They were in the road, and I didn't want to see someone run over them. So I don't know. We're going to put up posters, but they're in the shop. They want to be here now, but they are moaning. They're complaining, but God weaves our lives together as a tapestry. My first very bad experience with addiction was with my daughter's father. And hold on, let me bring the puppies, guys. I have to show you. Hold on 1 second. Come here, Silly. Let me show the audience. It's two of these puppies. Yes, it's two of these puppies. I don't know where they came from, but they were in the street and they're very small. So, guys, I always have animals on the show. My cats have been on here. My dog has been on here. These are strays. My first very, very bad experience with abuse was drug addiction. Not me using anything, but my daughter's dad. And from there I learned a lot, because you learn how to pick up the signs and you start to research things. And it was just a very, very bad experience for me, but it taught me a lot. Then when I was a pastor years later, with working with the youth and a lot of young adults, and I'm talking about young married couples that have small little children, they were most frequently the people that I would have to counsel. It would be the youth and then the young adults, some of the young adult couples. And that taught me a lot. And I was standing in Queenstown, Kumani Park in South Africa, in the Eastern Cape, right next to my church. and I was working in the garden. And on the street where the church is, right there, right in front of me, two cars passed. And the windows rolled down, and the one handed the other one a packet, and the other one returned a favor with some money. And I knew it was a drug deal. So I contacted the police. It's called the SAPS. And I said, you guys need someone to patrol there. So those years passed, and 2020, my mom passed away from stage 4 brain cancer, and God just changed my whole life. Everything went online. The church is closed, and everything just went online. And I did this interview, and that's how I met Kevin. But in my years of theology, I studied theology, but I also studied psychology and counseling. So that's why I specialize in trauma and addiction. So when I met Kevin, I was like, he's been through so much trauma. This is so cool, really. And I met him on my show while I was interviewing my brother. He's almost like my blood brother, but he's my coach as well. He's my bare knuckle coach, Hector Camacho Jr. I've known him for years. So on my show, I met Kevin, and then I hear the story about losing his sons and the drugs and the gun violence, which we have a lot of in South Africa as well. And I thought, my goodness, he must have so much pain because of the trauma and the addiction, that his son faced. So God really weaves the tapestry behind the scenes. I mean, the way that everything unfolds just is a reminder to me every day that He's all powerful and that He is in control. Now, it doesn't mean that the road is always easy. I had a lot of things that I had to go through before I got to a place where God completely I had to, I lost my mom. But God, in that same instance, gave me a new life. He gave me meticulous moments. And in 3 years later, I met Kevin, and, we are together and happy and everything. And what I do with Meticulous Moments that started in 2020 is community upliftment through leadership development. With MAM, I always say join the journey, because that's my thing. Martial arts is my thing. It's my life. And with that group, I host the events. I love events just like you. And, I really try and impart positive things into the martial arts community. Now, Kevin, through his struggles, he has started stoppinggunviolence.com and stoppingfentanyl.com. And I always give him a shout out, and I always ask people to visit these websites as well. I want to ask you a tricky question. You have gone through this now. And I can already see, and I picked something up when you were talking earlier. You were talking about it's your ministry now. What are you are going to start? I'm sure you have to start a movement or something to help people that face similar struggles than you. What has been that talk in your mind about that? What's the future plans?
Question. One of the things that I've tried kind of getting off the ground and kind of put it on hold is, some online martial arts groups,
Nice.
that, for Christian, martial arts instructors to connect, as well as, ones that were, martial artists are connecting on how to support each other through different injuries. And
Very
honestly, I just
good.
haven't put enough time into it yet. When I was in South Florida, I ran some adventure groups that, did when I was doing obstacle course racing competition, that kind of stuff that really took off. So I've built some really big Facebook groups before.
Nice.
I've built some for the substance abuse industry, some supportive groups, but haven't really taken that off yet. But that's something that I am looking at and kind of looking into. And again, with the addiction thing, I didn't really I never had a personal struggle with myself.
Like
And I didn't
me.
really know anybody that struggled with it when I got into it.
Yeah.
I was just always interested in psychology, and, those are the courses that seemed the most interested to me. So I went on and, didn't start my master's in substance abuse counseling. But it
Nice.
really wasn't until many years later that I really started, especially living in South Florida, I really started running into people that struggled. I had a couple of friends of mine that died that I didn't even know use. That passed away, especially during the fentanyl crisis. I had a lot of clients that passed away. I had a lot of, even
Yeah,
some
we've seen.
employees.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been, some of my hardest stories were employees that got themselves clean. I gave them a job doing outreach, for the companies, and a few months later, they relapsed and they passed away, and
Yeah.
I'd have parents call me up going, hey, I haven't really heard from my son much the last 3 or 4 years. I know
Yeah.
he's only working for you for 6 months, but can you tell me about my son? And I'm like, it's just so hard, especially having a son myself, that was 3 months old at the time. I'm like, I couldn't even imagine,
Oh my
how
God.
hard and painful that would be.
Yeah.
And I've never really had anybody in my family struggle,
Yeah. Same
with
here.
the addiction as much, but and it's not something I've ever really talked about before. But my sister, she had some issues, and she was put on pain pills, and she got hooked on doing a lot of pain pills, and she didn't die from that, but she stopped taking care of herself.
Yeah.
And she
It
passed
will
away
just
earlier this
go.
year from some heart issues because she wasn't monitoring her blood pressure. She wasn't taking her blood pressure pills. She wasn't doing that other stuff. She was just worried about, getting something to take the pain away, So,
Crazy, man.
it's
I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm really sorry for your loss. It's never easy losing someone. And the family at the church, whenever I lost someone from the church family, it was just as detrimental as losing an actual family member, because we become so engulfed in everybody's lives that they are so close to us, and then when we lose them, we feel like we could have done more, we could have said something better, and it's just people make those choices, and it's difficult. It's really difficult. I had a pastor. I was at a conference one here. I can't remember if it was Pastor Carlitz, but he said the choices we make is the life that we live. And I thought to myself, back to my life, what choices I made, what could I have done a little bit differently or a little bit better. Do you know, in 2020, when I was conducting funerals, everybody was asking me how many people passed away from COVID. I buried only one congregation member from COVID. All the other funerals I did in that year was from substance abuse, or it was from uh, uh, what do you call, a heart attack, or it was from a blood clot because of stress, because people started losing their jobs, their homes, and they couldn't feed their families, and that stress, and there were suicides as well. And you would think that in COVID it would be because of COVID, and it was not. And that just shows us that the things that we go through hits people differently. I mean, my mom, that would struck me what you talked about your sister, because she struggled with addiction, yes, but she passed away from something else. She stopped looking after herself. My mom was the most healthiest person I've ever seen in my life. Since I was a child, we've been on only certain types of health teas. I was never allowed to eat sweets. We lived healthy. She only drank water. She didn't drink. She didn't smoke. She exercised every day. Beautiful, most beautiful person I ever knew. And here, all of a sudden, COVID hits. 3 weeks later, she's in the hospital, and they say she's got an ear infection. They do the MRI, boom, stage 4 brain cancer. We give you 3 weeks. And I was like, what? This healthy person? It's not possible, and it's not fair. She ended up living 3 months because she waited for me to come and say goodbye. And I just called her every day on WhatsApp video, and I spent time with her until she lost her hearing. But by the time I reached her, it was 3 months later. She hung on, and she would write on a board, and then what she was trying to say to us, and I would reply. And if she was struggling to speak, I would write on the board for her to read it. And it was a horrific experience, and I still ask God why these things happen, because it was not fair. She was a beautiful person. She wouldn't hurt a fly. But stress hits people differently. Now, your most encouraging words that you can give the audience today. What would you want to leave them with? Words of wisdom and encouragement. What would that be?
going, stay healthy, be strong, spirit, mind, body. They all go together. If one's weak, they're all going to be weak. So yeah,
That's right.
just persevere, keep going, keep training, stay healthy. And again, it's not just the outside appearance. It's the inside appearance. It's
That's
here,
right.
it's here, and it's here. It's got to be all of those. So
I agree 100%. My apologies to the audience for the noise. People came into the office now, and sometimes they don't realize the noise that they are making. Very good words of encouragement. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today, for taking this time. I know you have a family. I'm not going to keep you any longer. We will definitely have a meeting about the upcoming things that we've talked about. And I just want to say it's such an inspiration to see your journey, Char, and to see what you are doing with the obstacles. You are climbing those mountains, you are breaking those rocks, you are just focused on your goals. Stay like that, keep inspiring people. And you know what? You should always remember man stands behind you. And so do I, and Meticulous Moments audience as well. Whenever you want to, you're welcome. Use my platforms, grow your groups, whatever I can do to help you advertise or market, please. Here we are, and we are here to lift community and to help people. So God bless you, my friend Us, and much respect to you always. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
I appreciate it. God bless you as well. So.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye bye.